Lucas Oil Stadium here in downtown Indianapolis behind me is known for hosting large-scale sporting events. The NCAA tournament comes to mind, Final Fours, Sweet 16, Elite Eight, first and second rounds, you name it, they've done it. Not to mention Big Ten championships in football and men's and women's basketball. Have you ever wondered what goes in to hosting an event like this? How far in advance you need to plan to have your city host large-scale sporting events like that? Indianapolis is known for being able to host sporting events like that and do it at an extremely high level. People from all across the nation comment on how well Indy does in hosting events like this, and not just sporting events, but events at large. Well, with a story we were working on here on WTHR, in conjunction with Purdue's new graduate program, a sport management graduate program. It's being run by Jeannie Boyd, who oversaw the men's NCAA basketball tournament for over a decade. She was instrumental in bringing Final Fours to Indianapolis in 2006, 2010, and 2015. She knows exactly what an undertaking that is to have your city host a Final Four, the requirements a city has to reach to be able to do that, and do that at a high level and a successful level to make it so people want to keep coming back and coming back and coming back. Well, it was an extremely insightful conversation with Jeannie Boyd, and given that Indianapolis is set to host not only next year's Final Four in 2026, but in 2029 as well, I thought it might be interesting to you to hear what exactly goes into it and how much of the behind the scenes go into it, and to make it a very, very successful endeavor. So here's a little bit of our conversation with Jeannie Boyd, the new executive director of this graduate program, sports management at Purdue, and who was directly involved with bringing the NCAA tournament Final Four to Indianapolis and all over the country during her decade plus at the NCAA.
I started out, I was at the University of Florida where I got my undergrad degree and master's degree, and I would change majors all the time. I started out as a business major and then went to accounting and then marketing and a little bit of education. And my dad, until the day he died, teased me about changing my major. He's like, don't tell me you called to say you changed your major. And at the end of the day, once I started working on campus in event operations and whatnot, and I did that at Florida and at LSU. And then I went to a conference office where I was the director of operations for all of the championships. And as a part of that, we were stationed in New Orleans. As a part of that, the Final Four was coming to New Orleans. So I was exposed to their staff for a couple of years, because you have to do a prelim right before going to Final Four. So at the end of that, they were like, hey, what would it take for you to come here? So I started out as a director of the Division I Men's Basketball Championship, which at that point in time, I oversaw and was the main point in contact with all of the different tournament managers across the country. So, and at the end of the day, what we wanted was everyone to have the same experience, whether they were walking into the gym in Dayton versus Oakland and everything in between. So I authored the bid specifications. I oversaw the site selection process for both preliminary rounds and Final Four. But you know what? It's all about relationships, honestly, because I look back and those who were at that time tournament directors, who were usually like senior associate ADs or, you know, like the deputy AD or whatnot, are now athletic directors and conference commissioners, and they've ended up being some of my best friends outside of the business, right? And so we almost like grew up together. Yeah. But you had an opportunity to kind of take a step back and look at the side-by-side comparisons as it relates to the bid specifications on what cities submit. And it's a binder that's about this thick that details everything from the number of hotel rooms, the transportation infrastructure, and even to back up, your organizational structure and reporting lines and budget and like big chunks, all the way down to the height and width and depth of the tables, how many chairs they're sitting courtside, all of the back of house space, all of the volunteers needed, and everything in between. But it really was eye-opening to see these these bids come in side by side and have an opportunity to compare them. And I was always fascinated with why everybody wanted to come to Indianapolis. I mean, I love it, and the people are amazing. Mike and I talk all the time about how special and almost understated everything about Midwestern people are, and that carries over to this thing. I never understood why everyone wanted to come to Indianapolis. It's not like it's a New Orleans where you have, you know, Bourbon Street, and it's not like San Antonio where you have the Riverwalk. But the people and the sports corp are what makes the difference and what makes it such a special place for large-scale events.
Right.
It is. It totally sets it apart, and the sports corp here is a well-oiled machine in the sense of and the experience is obviously the end user is what's important. So from the time people walk off the airplane and just something as simple as the decor in the airport really sets it apart. But your volunteer infrastructure is just crazy. So I was the main point of contact as a part of my responsibilities with before I got promoted to managing director, where I oversaw the day-to-day operations of the tournament. So all the staff and everybody reported to me. We had like 67 consultants or contractors that would do everything from like the center court seating configuration to everything in between, the signage and the digital components to it and all of that. So I was essentially a traffic cop. But one of my other responsibilities was I was the main point of contact between the NCAA and the NABC, the National Association for Basketball Coaches. And at one point in time, they proposed that the Final Four just alternate between Indianapolis and San Antonio. And again, I couldn't understand why, because it's not really a tourist destination. And I remember saying this in a follow-up meeting with the local organizing committee here locally, that the people are what sets it apart. Yes, it's walkable, and yes, the city's really clean, and the building people, again, they know what they're doing, but the people and the sports corp and the infrastructure makes all the difference.
Yeah, I was going to ask you why Indy is so attractive, and that seems to be the reason.
It's absolutely it is. And they have trained and have a core corp of volunteers in really key positions. I think about like Dr. Phil Borst, who is at everything. He's like omnipresent. Yeah. And he has managed the officials for 30 years probably, or since time began, essentially, from when Indianapolis started hosting all of these events. And it's also special that I looked in the history that Indianapolis, the Indy Sports Corp, was the first like local organizing, whether it's a sports foundation, a sports commission, or a sports corporation in the country. So they've set the tone for all of those behind them, and it feels like everybody's still catching up.
Yeah, right.
So I had to sit there and tell the basketball coaches that, hey, it's taxing on the city to be able to host this. I mean, there's a lot of effort in financial investment in it. So it takes a lot, and it wouldn't be possible to just rotate it between those two cities.
Right, and that's kind of leading me to, and kind of mentioned all your different responsibilities, but for someone who wouldn't know, I mean, everyone sees the finished product. This is fascinating for me, being credentialed media, to like last year's whole Purdue run and like seeing the in Providence this year, and just hearing you talk about it. But like for the layman, what all goes into a Final Four? I mean, it's a humongous undertaking. And again, you kind of mentioned it, but just like surface level.
It's a humongous undertaking, and you really start working with I'm going to call them future hosts, for years out. You can see that they're bid out now for 10 and 20 years. And it's interesting because it's not really the facilities that are occupied, it's the hotel packages that are occupied that far ahead. And so we have to stay out that far ahead. But working with a local organizing committee at the top level, they have to develop, like I worked with North Texas, which was really a combination of Dallas, Fort Worth, and Arlington. So you had 3 separate entities. Yeah. They'd never hosted before. So I had to develop their organizational chart from the beginning and say, this is, and what I did was I looked at everybody else's from years behind and kind of did a best practices type thing. This is a typical organizational chart. This is typical reporting lines, provided a budget, but they truly start about 3 or 4 years ahead of time in full-time roles in preparing for Final Four, because again, it's everything from the overall city infrastructure, from public services to public safety to the Visit Indy piece, or the Convention and Visitors Association, and the transportation infrastructure, the road closures, the bus support. I mean, it's a large undertaking.
So there you have it. There is so much that goes into bringing large-scale sporting events to a particular city, and you heard right there how instrumental Indiana Sports Corporation is here in Indianapolis to bring those events and consistently bring those events to our great city, and have a reputation for being such a renowned host city for sporting events and all sorts of events here, but primarily in the sports arena. Indiana Sports Corporation, huge, and what Jeannie Boyd is doing at Purdue, leading the sport management graduate program there, is going to be able to give students a direct line to all her connections with the Indiana Sports Corporation. But think of all the sporting bodies too around Indianapolis, like the NCAA, the Horizon League, USA Gymnastics, USA Swimming, colleges all around, being an athletic director one day. It's super interesting to hear someone with that experience and see what she's going to be doing with Purdue, but also the inner workings and the behind the scenes of hosting events like the Final Four here at Lucas Oil Stadium, at Gainbridge Fieldhouse, at wherever you might want to do it here in Indianapolis and across the nation. That's why Indianapolis is so special. She said it more than once there, and very insightful from Jeannie Boyd. Appreciate her time coming on, and hopefully you have a better idea of what it takes to host large-scale sporting events here in Indianapolis, and maybe more of an appreciation for it too. I know I certainly do on the other side when I'm getting credentialed to go to all these different locations, following Purdue basketball, IU basketball, Big Ten championships, Big Ten tournaments, you name it. So very, very insightful. We thank Jeannie Boyd for her time, and that's going to wrap it up right here on WTHR Plus. Keep it locked on Channel 13 for all your coverage of all things Indianapolis, all things sporting events. That's what we do. So Dominic Miranda here for 13 Sports.